Hello, one and all, and welcome to another NerdSociety.com review. I'm your host, as always, Ivan Krolo, aka the Game Raging Psycho, and today I'm giving you guys my review for X-Men: Days of Future Past, the big X-Men ensemble film, which has been dubbed the Avengers of the X-Men franchise, and for a lot of good reason. This film has a lot riding on it. Fox has spent a gargantuan amount of money marketing and just making this film. They've been steadily trying to regain people's trust in this franchise after X3 The Last Stand and X-Men Origins The Wolverine practically killed it. And First Class and Wolverine, they helped, sure. They did show that Fox is willing to bring this franchise back into shape. But this film solidifies it. This is not only the best X-Men film in terms of sheer quality. This is probably the most well-rounded comic book film I've ever seen. This film has everything in it. The best parts of all of the other cinematic universes all put in here and done beautifully when it could have been a disaster. But before I give you guys my full thoughts on the film itself, I just want to tell you guys that if you need a site where all your nerd needs can be fulfilled, you can go to nerdsociety.com. We have interviews with creators such as Todd McFarlane, interviews with some famous cosplayers. We have reviews of TV shows, comic books, films, video games. We have sort of spotlight articles about collectibles, toys, and all that sort of merchandise stuff you guys like to hear about, T-shirts. It's basically all things nerd and geek culture related. It's all there, and if you need a site like that, you can check out nerdsociety.com in the description below. Now on to the review. Holy shit, was this movie good. This was the film out of all the comic book films coming out this year. I was the most nervous about this one because, like I said, this movie had a lot riding on it. It had so many characters, so many actors. It needed to be a continuation of First Class and a send-off to the old cast. It needed to also correct the mistakes that were created by X-Men Origins Wolverine, X-Men 3 The Last Stand. It needed to bring this franchise back into shape, and it needed to be, at the very least, a great film in its own right. Because Captain America, The Winter Soldier, set the bar exceptionally high this year. And I think that in several ways, this film surpasses that one. Now, whether or not which one I like more is still kind of up to debate, but they're just so both fucking good. I cannot decide. Like, they could just be tied for my favorite films of the year thus far, but that could very well change as time progresses. But when you leave out of the movie theater and you spend the next day, thinking about the film, what happened in it, and you can only good things come up in your head, that is always a good sign. That is the hallmark of a good film. And this is not only a good film, this is fucking exceptional. I am surprised that they were able to do all of these things in the film and make them mesh, make them work perfectly with each other, and just create the best X-Men film ever. This film takes the best elements of X2, First Class, The Avengers, Terminator, the Wolverine even. All the best elements were cherry-picked from all those films. They saw what was wrong, and then almost all of it is corrected here. This is probably the most complete comic book film I've ever seen in my life. Because even the best ones, even the ones I like the most, admittedly, they have something missing. Batman in Batman Begins, the fight scenes, I know why they were filmed like that, but I still want to see Batman really kick ass. Or The Dark Knight, the fight scenes aren't that great, and there's some plot issues and stuff with that. Or X2, again, the fight scenes really aren't there, and I feel like a lot of the characters kind of got shafted. They didn't get an opportunity to really shine throughout. But this film takes like I said, all the good things about all those various other films, combines them, and creates an exceptionally well-made product. This film has everything. It has a well-told storyline that is actually very simple, because when you have time travel in your plot, the plot can get really muddled. It can just become a complete and utter mess, and it can completely fall apart at the seams. The plot here is exceptionally simple. It's the year 2023. the humankind released the Advanced Sentinels program to hunt down mutants. But the Sentinels, they started targeting humans who had the potential to have mutant offspring. And so both humans and mutants were targeted by the Sentinels, and the few humans who don't have the potential for the X gene, they are pretty much the only ones who can get to live any sort of decent life. The world is in complete ruins. The sun is completely blotted out from the smog and the dust in the sky. And all around, it is a shit situation in the world. And so, in one last-ditch effort, the X-Men meet up with several new mutants, including Sunspot, Bishop, Blink, and a couple of others who are led by Kitty Pryde and Iceman. And with them, they decide that they're going to send Professor X's mind into the past to 1973 when Mystique assassinated Boulevard Trask and pretty much set into motion the Sentinel program. Now, Professor X's mind cannot sustain the trip because it's actually very painful. Even sending someone's mind a couple of days back can have some side effects, and it's not very good for the victim's mind. But they decide to send Wolverine because he has his healing factor, and his mind and body can constantly sort of repair themselves while he's there, so the trip won't instantly kill him like it would Professor X. So Kitty Pryde sends Wolverine's mind back into 1973, where he has to get Magneto and Professor X to work together in order to stop the apocalyptic future that is going on when the film begins. And the film mostly focuses on the first-class people. You know, when I was going into it, I thought there was going to be like this kind of split thing where we're going to constantly cut in between the timelines. But no, it begins in the future. Then most of the middle half is almost entirely in the past. And then when the big climax is happening both in the past and in the future, that's when the future segments come back. And I really got to tell you guys, the future bits are so fucking cool. The beginning of the film, where you just see how the world is, you see how humans who have the X gene potential and mutants are just corralled into like these Nazi Holocaust type concentration camps. They have these big M's like cut into their faces to know that they are a mutant. It's just a very powerful opening, and it's really reminiscent of the comic book. And as you probably know, I'm not a fan of the comic, but as an opening scene, that really set the mood for what the future is. You know, less is sometimes more. Like, they easily could have spent like half an hour telling you, oh, how shit the future is. But no, in this first couple of minutes, with that simple shot of these mutant concentration camps, they really set the mood for the rest of the film and really show you just how bad the situation is. And the future segments do not hold back at all. Like, Singer easily just could have chickened out and had everyone in the future be okay in every fight scene, but no. The Sentinels are genuinely terrifying. They have the ability to adapt to any mutant's power. For example, if you shoot fire at them, they're basically going to turn themselves into steel so that the fire won't have any effect. Or if you cover them up in ice, they're just going to heat their body temperature up to melt the ice, and then they're going to kill you. And the Sentinels in the future are so fucking terrifying. They're like from this kind of weird like 50s sci-fi movie. That's kind of how they remind me of. They don't really have any shape. They can constantly like change their shape around like blobs or something. They're comprised of these small metal segments that are held together by a magnetic core, which is why Magneto can't just rip them to pieces himself. They have this magnetic core that keeps them together. And they're just really terrifying. They can change their arms into swords. They can change their entire bodies into drills to break into underground bunkers. They got these lasers that fire out of their faces, which is reminiscent of the Destroyer from Thor, admittedly. But these things are genuinely terrifying. They don't say a word. They don't have any sort of AI personality in them, but they are just terrifying. Like, these guys are like the T-1000 if the T-1000 had mutant superpowers, and that is fucking terrifying in and out of itself. And the whole future segment has a lot of Terminator in it, which makes sense because Bryan Singer did consult James Cameron as to how to make time travel work, because James Cameron did Terminator 2 Judgment Day, which is, by the way, one of the most awesome movies ever made ever. If you haven't seen it, you either need to go see it or die because we do not need people like you. Just go and see it. And there is a fair bit of Terminator influence present in the film. And it's really obvious. There's this shot in the beginning where you see the concentration camps and you just see these dead mutants like left in these big ditches and piles. They're dead, they're rotting. Some of them have turned completely into skeleton. The few survivors who are scavenging out for food and shit, they're just walking over the bones of their dead brothers and sisters. It's a really grisly scene, and it's really reminiscent of, like I said, Terminator. As for the past bits are where most of the humor, the character development, and the themes of the film come through. The future bits are mostly there to show you just how bad things are, and they serve as kind of a send-off for the old cast, and they also serve to give you more of the blockbustery action bits. Now, if you go into this film thinking it's going to be like Man of Steel or The Avengers or Iron Man 3 or Thor the Dark World, where an entire city is going to be completely fucked up the ass by the end of the film, or half a continent is going to be split in half or ripped to pieces, no. This film's set pieces are great, but they're not set pieces where it's all just grandiose stuff. It's all just shit exploding 24/7, or so much so that you can barely see what the hell is going on. No. The action bits are more restrained, but they're also a lot more brutal. They are some of the alright, this is a small spoiler, but I just gotta say it. The future X-Men do die, but Kitty Pryde does, send one of them's consciousness back into the past so that they can warn themselves not to go someplace where the Sentinels end up murdering them. And that makes sense. And the way the future X-Men get killed is fucking brutal. Like, they make a lot of the deaths in this film, they make the Wolverine R-rated version look like I don't know, the Muppet Show or whatever. The deaths are very brutal. They're very shocking in a positive way. They're not shocking where it's like gross out humor or it's just shock value. Like when you see X-Men get massacred, it's really painful and very shocking to watch. And Singer really doesn't hold back anything in the future segments. He paints the future as it is. It is a bleak dystopian world. And he doesn't really try to hammer on the point. Like I said, he has the opening, which pretty much sets the mood for the future segments. And the future segments are probably my favorite part of the whole movie. Not to say that the past segments are bad, because the past segments have a lot of great storytelling, a lot of great humor, and a lot of great character development going on in them. But the future segments, where you just see X-Men get fucked up, bro. They get fucking annihilated, and it's awesome, shocking, and sad at the same time. As for the past segments really focus on the architects of the mutant-human relations. And these are Charles Xavier, Eric Lencher, and Raven, a.k.a. Mystique. Like, these three are kind of like the trinity of the Fox universe, so to speak. These guys, their choices, their decisions in life, and the actions they take, they completely alter and change the way mutants perceive humans or humans perceive mutants. And this is something that was very present in X-Men, in Singer's first two X-Men films. Those films were all about human and mutant relationships. That's what I feel X-Men should be about. It shouldn't be about them going to space and fighting the Kree, or them facing the upteenth alternate what-if future version of themselves. I think that the X-Men should be about the human-mutant relations. And what I particularly liked about the future segment is that when the Sentinels started targeting regular humans who might have mutant children, the potential for the X gene, the humans and the mutants, they decided to join forces and fight against the Sentinels. Of course, the Sentinels completely massacre them, and there's only a scant few humans and mutants left. But it's really great to know that humans and mutants were able to put aside their differences and work together. And this film has a very bleak future, but the ending is very positive, it's very heartfelt, and it's very optimistic. Like, this film does have its fair share of darkness in it, but it also has a very hopeful, optimistic image, and it's really about taking the pain that's inside of you. The pain from like a tragedy, the loss of a friend, the loss of a loved one, or losing multiple loved ones. It's all about taking all the pain and hatred that is directed towards you, taking it in, and using it to make yourself stronger. And this has always been a hallmark of the X-Men. It has always been that humanity may fear and hate them. Humanity may hurt and kill them. But the X-Men, the mutants, they will always take that hatred, that pain they have coming at them. They will always use it to make themselves stronger and better than they were before. And this is central to Charles's character development. Because Charles, in the beginning of this film, he is past Charles. He is completely screwed over. He's using this DNA-altering drug which temporarily repairs his spine, but on the hindsight, he uses it so much that he loses his power. And again, this is a minor spoiler, but he actually did open the school. He did start taking students in. Havoc and some of his other teammates from first class, they were helping him out build the school, and for a while things were good. But then the Vietnam War got worse, and dozens and hundreds of Charles's own students who he came to care and love for, they were drafted into a war, and then through Cerebro, he tried to kind of help them out, but they just got massacred. 50,000 young men lost their lives in that war, and Charles was so devastated by this, along with losing Eric as a friend and Raven as a sister. All these things, the pain, the misery, the hate, it all just built up inside, and it kind of broke him. And when Wolverine is sent back into the past, Wolverine, kind of helps him realize, take that pain, take that misery, take that anger you have inside and use it to make yourself better. Use it all to become greater than you ever were before. And that is just a great message, not just for the X-Men, but that's a great message for anybody. That's kind of how life is. It's taking the good and bad, but when the bad gets really bad, you don't try to hide away from it. You just take that shit, you use it, and then you use it to make yourself stronger, more powerful than you were before. And Charles, along with Mystique and kind of Eric, but it's more subtle with him, they all get great character arcs. They all sort of reach a sort of middle ground. It's not a big divide as it used to be between Eric and Charles. When Wolverine tells them this is the future, this is what happens because when you two assholes cannot put your differences aside and you don't work together, this is what happens in the future. And at the end of the film, they don't all suddenly, become best friends and all of that, but they're left in a position where their relationship is a lot better than it used to be, and Mystique is really put in a very fascinating situation. I cannot tell you what it is, but she kind of becomes a middle ground between Xavier and Charles. She's not going to try and kill all humans, kind of like how Eric thinks they should be, but she's not going to just accept and love all humans. She's not going to hurt the innocent, but if one of them starts experimenting on mutants or starts killing them, she's going to kick his ass. And she becomes kind of like this great middle ground between these two, and that's kind of how Cyclops is in the comics right now. He is between Xavier and Magneto, and he is kind of like the balance between these two extremes, and that's kind of what Mystique becomes at the end of the film. And she's a really big character in it. Her powers are basically what allows the future Sentinels to adapt to any other mutant's powers. I believe that was supposed to be Rogue, but I'm not sure. The Rogue doesn't really make a big appearance in the film. She has only one scene, which is unfortunate, but in the defense of the film, Singer did say he was going to release an extended cut where he's going to put in all the scenes that were cut out, and hopefully Rogue and some other characters get a little bit of a spotlight. Not that anyone gets shafted, really. I mean, yes, the future cast really doesn't have a lot to do. They're just there to sort of kick ass, take names, and get massacred in spectacular fashion. But the future, all the X-Men get a chance to shine before they go down. Colossus does some really fucking awesome maneuvers. He kicks some Sentinel ass. Storm, Magneto, they have this big awesome combo attack on the Sentinels, which just looks spectacular. Bishop gets a few good shots in. And Blink is probably my favorite of the new characters. She doesn't get much to do other than just teleport stuff, but the way she fucks with the Sentinels is hilarious. Like, there are so many moments in the film where a future Sentinel goes to kill someone, she opens a portal, and then he comes out on the other side of, like, the room or whatever, and the Sentinel is just looking like, what the fuck just happened? And I just love the way she fucks with them. It's if you were a fan of Nightcrawler in X2, the way he was just sort of fucking around with the guards in the White House when he went to assassinate the president, you're gonna love Blink. I mean, her power looks visually very interesting. Her costume looks very well done. In fact, all the costumes look very well. They look very good for what they are. They remind me of the Ultimate X-Men suits, especially Colossus's costume. Wolverine's is kind of like a mix of his comic book one and the X-Force one. But yeah, out of all the new guys, Blink was my favorite. I just love the way she fucks around with the Sentinels, and you can tell that the Sentinels are kind of annoyed with her. These guys probably do. If they have any sort of personality or real, like, genuine intellect in them besides just being killing machines, I'd like to think that these guys really fucking hate teleporters because they can be a colossal pain in the ass. But the main themes of the film are really sort of being the better man. That's it. That's the big focal point of the film. Eric and Mystique are on a path where they sort of believe that, kind of humans need to be, that it's us or them. There cannot be any peace between us. We got to take out the bad guys before they take out us. And Boulevard Trask is kind of, he's not really a villain in this film. If you're going into this film thinking Boulevard Trask is going to be like a bad guy, you'd be pretty damn wrong, because he is a scientist, and while he does think that the mutants that they are a threat, he actually says in the film that he admires them, and he actually thinks that they are something humanity desperately needs to face a greater enemy extinction, because when he goes to pitch his early Sentinel program, he basically tells them that when us, the Homo sapiens, arrived in the age of the Neanderthals, the Neanderthals, they couldn't keep up with us because they were evolutionary not as advanced as us, and they were eventually exterminated because that's what happens. You're either on top or you die. And Boulevard Trask believes that the same thing is going to happen to regular humans, that the mutants are going to one day become greater in number, and that regular people, they're just going to disappear off the face of the planet. And he thinks that, not the mutant, he thinks extinction is the ultimate enemy of humanity. And he genuinely believes that by uniting humans using the Sentinel program and going after mutants who he sees as the first enemy who could ever unite humanity ever. Humanity has created alliances and stuff, but he thinks that mutants are the first threat that could truly unite all humans together into a kind of like this utopian society where they will fight against the mutants. They will all stand together, stand tall, and stand strong. And when you really see what the fruits of his labor entail in the future segments, you just see how things just go completely fucking wrong, because he creates the Sentinels and they destroy the future. The planet is a horrible, ruined wasteland where there's barely anyone alive. The sun is blotted out because of the smog and the destroyed cities, and it's all around just a shitty situation. And he's not really a bad guy, so to say. He just thinks that humanity needs to protect themselves. He doesn't hate mutants. He actually says that he admires them. He thinks that the things they're able to do are beautiful, they're magnificent, but at the same time, it's us or them. And Charles is really the better man out of them all, and Mystique actually does get into that situation as well. Mystique has this big sort of vendetta against Boulevard Trask for something he does. I'm not going to spoil what, but it's pretty gruesome. It's justifiable for why she hates him and why she wants him dead. And I was really surprised that she was like a main character of the film. I thought she was just going to be like Eric's kind of lapdog, but she's really one of the main architects of the future. In fact, her choices directly create the apocalyptic future we see in the future segments. And I gotta say this also, Quicksilver was so cool in this movie. Holy shit. You could tell that Evan Peters was having so much fun playing this role. The dude is just hysterical. The way his powers work, is kind of like a classic speedster. You know, when he activates his powers and goes into super speed mode, everything slows down around him. It's kind of like bullet time, but the way he uses it is so fucking hilarious. There's this one bit where like a bunch of guards they're gonna go gun down Eric, Wolverine, and Xavier, and Quicksilver activates super speed, and then he like positions guards to do like these hilarious things. Like he gives one guy a wedgie, he pokes one guy in the face, and you just see his face like slowly expand because of the poke. He takes a guy's gun out of his hand, puts his fist in front of his face, and so when time speeds back up, he actually punches himself in the face. And I wish he was in the movie more. I mean, if he was, like, if they put him later on in the film, he would have been amazingly overpowered. Like, this guy could probably fuck up all the X-Men minus Xavier and probably Magneto without any problem. Like, he is that OP. But you can just tell the guy has a lot of fun playing the character. I mean, yeah, he doesn't look great, but Jesus Christ, whatever this guy did or said anything, I was laughing my goddamn ass off. And the film has actually great humor. Like, this film easily could have been a dry, humorless spell, but it actually has a lot of great interactions, has a lot of genuinely funny jokes. It's not like stupid, oh, look at that, aren't we hilarious, lol, 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 Wolverine punch Beast, lol, 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 lol. No, it's not like that. I mean, yeah, Beast like hurls Wolverine over he like throws him off like the balcony of the mansion. You just hear Wolverine scream when he goes down, and that was pretty funny too. But yeah, the film does have lots of genuinely funny moments, and Xavier actually has a lot of funny banter too. And there was one thing I was hoping that they were going to call back to, like Xavier, like he kind of remembers Wolverine from First Class, and then when Wolverine tries to convince him to basically help him out, Xavier tells him the same thing Wolverine told him in First Class, and he tells him to go fuck himself. And I was really hoping they were going to address that, and they really do. And it's funny to see Wolverine get knocked down a peg. And really, for those of you who are worried that Wolverine's just going to hog the spotlight in this movie, he really doesn't. I'd argue that the main spotlight is really on Eric, Charles, and Mystique, and Wolverine is just kind of there for the ride. You know, he's just there for this plot to happen. He really doesn't get a lot of opportunities to kick some ass, even though he does get a couple good shots in. And yeah, so if you're one of those guys who's worried that this is just going to be Wolverine Days of Future Past instead of X-Men Days of Future Past, don't worry about it. Wolverine doesn't hog the spotlight. When he's there, he works great. But when he's not necessary, he gets kind of sidelined in favor of the character who's important for the scene or for the moment. And really, this film has a lot of great X-Men tag team action. You know, these guys really use their powers in creative ways. You know, Blink combines her powers with Colossus. She combines her powers with Bobby. Sunspot gives Bishop power. Magneto and Storm, they have this awesome combo attack on the invading Sentinels who are attacking their final base of operations, and it's just really cool. Like, this is like the first time you actually see the X-Men work as a team. They're combining their powers, working together, and it's just all done in spectacular fashion. All the CGI looks great. The future Sentinels look fucking horrifying. Like, imagine if the Enderman was combined with the T-1000 from Terminator 2 and like a freaky alien robot thing from XCOM. They are so fucking cool looking, and they're so scary. And overall, this is probably the most complete comic book film I've ever seen. Even the best ones, they have something missing. Even Winter Soldier's barely in the movie, and the villain was still not very threatening. There was just something missing about it, and I really didn't buy the Helicarrier thing. That was kind of a problem with me. Or the Dark Knight, you know, the action set pieces aren't that well done. But yeah, you get the point. Even the best ones, or the ones I consider to be the best ones, they always have something missing. They always have something that's keeping it away from being the full package. And this film is the full package. It does time travel exceptionally well. It perfectly balances out the two timelines. It has great character banter, great humor. It has great character development, which feels natural. It feels realistic. It's not cheesy. It's not over dramatic. It feels genuine, and you can tell that the actors in this movie, they gave their hearts and souls into making it. The performances are just all around fantastic. When you see Charles and Eric in the past conversing about the mutant issue, it's just great stuff. You can tell Hugh Jackman's having a lot of fun as Wolverine. He's become a progressively better Wolverine as time has passed on, and he kind of has this edge to him in this timeline, and it's a great continuation of what happened in First Class. It gives the old X-Men a proper and very beautiful send off. I was choking up when I saw how the future is altered. I'm not gonna say how, but they do obviously succeed, and the future is altered. And really, I choked up inside. It was just a great way to send off the original cast and let the new guys take over. It has great comic book-esque action, but it's not just big action extravaganza where half a fucking continent gets destroyed. And overall, this is a film that I just absolutely loved from beginning to end. There's almost nothing I can really say that's bad about it, except some of Magneto's motivation at the end being kind of iffy here and there, and some of Mystique's kind of she looks a little weird. She looks a lot darker than she did in First Class, and it doesn't really look as good as it did in First Class. I wish they could have used CGI to make it just look a smidge better. But besides that, all the performances are great. If you were hoping to see the X-Men do some awesome team fighting together and kick some ass, this is the film you gotta see. I hope you guys enjoyed the review, and I'll see you later. Bye.